I'm going to come to our third presentation with Adam Wells. Now, Adam first walked the Camino Frances in April, May 2011, and then again in October 2019. He's also walked the Camino Batazan from Bayonne to Pamplona and the Camino Interior from Irún through the Basque Country to Santo Domingo de la Casalda. And he's a life coach who uses the Camino as a tool and catalyst for personal transformation. So he's going to give us a very different perspective on Camino with the title, Life After the Camino and Reintegration. So thank you, Adam, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Can you see the screen? Everybody?
Yes, that's coming through perfectly.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, everybody, thanks. It's a great pleasure to be here and share this with you. Indeed, 10 years ago today, I was in, I don't know if any of you can guess, but that's Leon. And I was enjoying a fantastic lunch, which I thought was fantastic, a seafood lunch, but literally, probably right now, 10 years ago, at this very moment, I was running to the toilet because that seafood lunch had given me food poisoning, and I then locked myself away for 24 hours. So I'm hoping I'm going to have a better afternoon. So thank you. So let's begin. I knew nothing about the Camino and the return journey 10 years ago. I literally just wanted to walk across Spain and have that experience. But I do remember hearing these expressions or reading in a book that, you know, you have one life before your Camino and a completely different life after it. Now, I didn't know really what that meant. I came back from that Camino, I think with just one sort of flash of inspiration. I wanted to help inspire people to walk their own Camino. And I think the journey over the last 10 years has been to find out what is this all about. And so what I'm going to share with you is just my perception, my take on it. And I think the thing is, with the return part of the Camino journey, you know, it's as unique as going off on Camino. Each of our Caminos are completely unique. And so the return aspect is unique. So what I'd like to do is just invite you as I go through this presentation, just to maybe reflect on certain aspects that may be relevant for you, but equally may not be. Okay. So let's begin. Now, when we get to Santiago, we do get given a clue around how to handle the return, because on the Plateria store of Santiago Cathedral, there is a symbol. I know some of you will know that symbol. It's the Chiro. And then you'll also have, on the right-hand side, you see the A, and on the left-hand side of the circle there, you see the O, and that's Alpha and Omega. But on the Camino, and that means, you know, in Greek, it's the Alpha is the beginning and the Omega is the last letter of the alphabet, the end. Now on the Camino, those symbols, those letters are in reverse. So normally the A is on the left and the O is on the right. But on the Camino here, it's on the right, and it's symbolizing that the end is now the beginning. And the symbol, in other words, that you have finished your Camino, now begin the rest of your life, whatever that means. You know, so we come back thinking, okay, let's begin the rest of our life. And it's hard to begin the rest of our life because, you know, we're leaving a very, very special world. We have, you know, we've had an amazing time, haven't we? We've improved our fitness. We've probably been the fittest we've ever been for a long time. We've connected to nature. We've slowed down. We've found a new natural rhythm, our natural pace, perhaps. Then there's that communitas, you know, that amazing feeling to be with people that from all around the world. We're more, you know, our similarities outweigh our differences. We're helping others. We have a very simple life, walking on the Camino. All we do is get up, walk, rest, and play, really, isn't it? And sleep. We have a sense of daily purpose. Very, very simple. We're all going to the same destination. And at the same time, we're seeing ourselves slightly differently. We're breaking through some of our limitations. We're learning things about a different country, a different culture. We're having lots of different experiences. And so, you know, we come back with that sense of accomplishment. And actually, what have we discovered whilst we've been away? A different side to life, a sense of freedom. Maybe I was more myself whilst I was away in Spain. Maybe I'm being more authentic. And so the journey coming back from this amazing, special world, of course, it's going to be different. And we can face some challenges, but, you know, we can, I think a lot of us, we do come back, you know, with joy and excitement. What an amazing experience. And it's in the beginning might be like a very much a honeymoon period that we're in. We have this, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change this, all this insights and such like. But then over time, maybe that dissipates. But then there's some of us that might come back and, you know, we may be feeling sort of discombobulated. We have an inner disequilibrium. We're not sure who we are. And we're not sure what's actually going to come next. So we don't feel necessarily in control. We feel out of sorts, you know. And then there's others of us that maybe come back disillusioned. We don't actually want to return to the life we had. We know we've had something come up, and actually I want it to be different. And then others of us maybe, you know, come back with a sense of fear and you know, I've got to face reality. Maybe I have to change aspects of my life. I have no choice. I've got to confront some difficult choices and changes, and you don't know how to. Or we come back and we're stuck. We come back with more questions than answers. We went off on Camino and we thought we'll get the answer. We had all these high expectations, and actually nothing happened. We're lost. And then there's others that we come back and we had an amazing Camino, and we really want to bring the Camino philosophy into our life, but actually I can't for whatever reason. And so we are down, feeling down, because we recognize we might have to sacrifice what we've actually gained, and that can be quite challenging to do that. And then there's others of us that come back and we're sort of feeling misunderstood. We get back and people don't want to hear our stories, or they're not interested. The world of the banal just continues. Maybe we're thinking this is just a very banal, crazy world, and I don't fit in it anymore. And so we feel misunderstood. So these are sort of some of the emotions that we can feel when we come back, and it's hard. It really is hard. And I think my take on it all, is it really depends how we approach the Camino and how we walk our Camino. We hear this expression, tourist, peregrino, half between being a tourist and half being a pilgrim, and a pilgrim. And I think it begins, this return journey really begins with the beginning of the Camino journey, with our approach to the Camino itself. Because deciding upon whether you're a tourist, peregrino, or a pilgrim, a tourist, what does a tourist really do when they go and travel? They basically go away to have an experience, but they fundamentally come back the same person that they left as, with a broader aspect, broader mind about the world. A pilgrim goes because they know they're going for a transformational experience. They know they want to come back changed. They're walking to a sacred destination for a reason, and they're going to have this inner experience. And a peregrino is maybe a person that started off as a tourist and then got halfway maybe with, I'm having an inner journey, I'm having this transformation, but perhaps I don't understand why. And this is the challenge. Maybe a lot of us, I think, go off on Camino, maybe seeing a film, and then, I'm going to do that. And we begin just thinking, I'm going to go, it's a holiday, it's a vacation. And then they have a semi-pilgrim experience on the way. And we return back and we don't know what's happened to us. And that is why the assimilation is so difficult. And so, a pilgrim fundamentally experiences an inner journey, and pilgrimage is really got the structure of a rites of passage experience and a hero's journey. And so, like a rites of passage experience is essentially broken down into 3 stages: a separation stage. You then leave the comfort of the known world. You go and have an initiation stage where you're in this unknown world and having an ordeal of some sort. You go off on a quest and you transform your thinking or your way of being on that quest, and you return home. And so it's those 3 stages. And the Camino is the same in many ways. It is the same. we have this call to the Camino. We leave the comfort of our home. We go to Spain for an extended period of time. We walk across Spain and we get challenged. So here in this diagram, you'll see there's that threshold. I look at that threshold simply as being our flights to Spain or our journey to Spain and walking over the Pyrenees Mountains if we're doing the Camino Francés. And then if we're not used to walking, we're basically on this thing in the hero's journey called the road of trials. We're being tested and challenged, and we have no idea how we're going to respond. And it's in that moment of all these tests and these trials that we get to learn to discover ourselves. And then we have this one great disaster moment, and we get through it. And it's like the abyss, and then we come back and we return home with a different way of thinking. And I think the best way for me to really share this story is, I mean, I met a lady a year after my Camino. I was walking the section from, well, the Camino Finisterre. And so I met a French-Canadian lady. And she said to me, I'll explain to you what all the Camino is about. She said, you can break it down into 3 stages. First stage is called hell. The second stage is called death. And the third stage is called creation. I said, okay, well, tell me more. And she said, well, basically, she said, this is my second Camino. She's about 72 years old. And she said, I walked my first one about 6 or 7, 8 years, no, it was 8 years previously, when just after my husband died. I was completely bereft after 40 years of marriage. And so a friend said, go and walk the Camino. And so she said, being French-Canadian, I'll start in Le Puy. And she said, well, I started in Le Puy, and the first 1,000 kilometers to the middle of Spain, to the Meseta, she said, was hell. All I did every single day was just cry, wail. I could not believe my life was over. I had no future. It was over. My husband was my life. And that was hell. And then I'm walking across the Meseta, and I suddenly one day just fall to my knees. She said, because I had this epiphany. And it was simply that my husband was part of my life. He wasn't the whole of my life. And I got up and I had this renewed energy that I couldn't explain. And what happened was that the physicality of the Camino, the day in, day walking, simply broke me down. But I couldn't stop really facing those fears that I had to face, whatever it was. And it was in the Meseta, I couldn't cry any longer. And so I had this transformation. And then I carried on walking in creation stage. She called Galicia. She said, what did I always want to do in my life? She said, I've always had this passion to help underprivileged children in Latin America. So I decided I'm going to sell everything and I'm going to spend my time helping underprivileged kids. And that's what I've been doing. And she said, I've been really blessed with it. And so in many ways, this story, I think, really typifies the power of the Camino in the transformation experience. But equally how the return aspect is we're talking to bring out into the world this new me. What came up for me on the Camino? If we're doing it as a pilgrimage, as a pilgrim, how do I bring that out into the world? And that is the challenge of the return. That's what the return is asking for from us. And so I think this is a photo from the pictures. This is Rabbe de las Calzadas, and this is just wall art in the village. And I think it talks very much to the power of the Camino, that whilst we're walking, if we're aware of this, we as individuals, we are the hero of our life story. And we can sort of bring our gift, or whatever the gift is, out into the world in our own way, in whatever shape or form. It doesn't mean you have to, be on social media going crazy, but in our own way, we make a difference. And that's what this message is about with the Camino. And we do see it in, when we come back from Camino, we want to do something. We move, we go off on Camino in the beginning, and often we're a seeker. And we have this transformatory experience on the Camino. And it's like, I know what I'm going to do now when I get back. And we move from being a seeker to being a provider. And so we see that, like, I want to be a hospitalero or hospitalera. I want to contribute in some way. And this is the return. How can I bring that contribution out? And so here, we return, bringing this gift back from the Camino. Now, in the old days, people would walk home. The pilgrims of old, they would walk all the way back. And so they'd spend the months walking back, pondering reflecting, how am I going to bring this gift, whoever it is, back into the community or whatever. Today, we don't. We just jump on the plane, come home, and we could be at the office desk within 24 hours. So we don't actually at all deal with the return. We may think of the Camino simply as just the middle section, the initiation. We go off on Camino, and it's just the middle bit. We forget about the beginning, about what I'm leaving behind. We forget about coming back. And so we then get stuck. But it's this recognition that the return is the most important part of this entire journey. Otherwise, we get stuck in the middle. So this is just some questions that we can ask ourselves when we get back. And it's from a pilgrim's guide, every pilgrim's guide to walking to Santiago de Compostela. But it's, you know, what meetings, experiences, knowledges, and images of the journey do I retain? What inward understanding and outer manifestations of it do I bring to those around me? So it's it's moving away from the me to the we. It's expanding ourselves. We're thinking from a larger, broader life perspective. This is what the Camino is asking from us when we get back. What has changed in me as a consequence of being on the Camino, on the way? And what do I have to allow to grow and mature in myself? And that's what it's fundamentally about. The hero's journey is about. It's a natural, archetypal way, way of human growth. It's the hero's journey. And so it's directing us to our maturity. It's directing us from being an adult into an elder as well. So we bring our wisdom out into the world. And so, yeah, so here are just some thoughts around how we can prepare before we go off on Camino for the return. So, we're really managing our expectations, and asking ourselves, why am I walking? Going deeper, what is it that I'm seeking? We may not know the answers at the beginning. They may come up on the way, but it's at least opening up that inner journey, contemplating it. Am I walking as a tourist or a pilgrim? Is it the journey or the destination? All these things we hear are about, all those conversations. They're a pilgrim or a tourist, is it a journey destination? It's important to ask ourselves those questions. Keeping a journal, writing a letter to yourself before you go. The big one, I think, is like with the hero's journey, very much we see it as a mentor, like we see in all the films. There's that mentor that's there that guides the hero in the Hollywood movies to go off into the unknown. And it's the same with the Camino. Find somebody that you really trust, who's walked the Camino, who can support you fully before, during, and after, and you can really sort of prepare, experience, and then unpack your Camino with that person. It's totally a thing to do. And the other thing too, I think is very important, is that whilst you're on Camino in Spain, your family or whoever's back home is having a Camino without you. And so the Camino at home, when you return back, it's always being open to inquiring, how was your Camino at home without me? What happened? What came up? And opening the conversations there. And just sort of setting the scene too. You may well be different when you come back, and you may be asking for some space. And what might you need when you return? And then here's a couple of Returning from Camino, a great book by Alexander John Shire, well worth a read too. Good tips. And then obviously I'm biased around Walking the Camino 6 Ways to Santiago, because I showed that in the UK for a couple of years. Or a similar documentary, just to prepare people around, more for the family, more for the people around you, to just at least explain the experience that you're going to have. And I think finally, when you get back, it's just unpack the experience with your mentor. Recognize too that the inner Camino may not be over, and there is this, I call it a disease called Caminitis. We keep going back to the Camino because we think the answers we're seeking are on the Camino. And I think just being conscious that actually maybe some of the answers that we're seeking, if we're still seeking answers, may not actually be there. The answers are actually in the ordinary world, in our home world. And if we keep going back, looking, we're actually what's taking potentially is the shadow journey. We're never actually going to find those answers there. So it's just a risk we could have, this Caminitis. And being patient, trust and being patient when we return, the serendipity. When we're on Camino, there is so much mystery, the serendipity a slower way of life. It's bringing all those learnings from the Camino into our life and living it with that as much as we can. And yeah, staying present really. And I think, yeah, and I think, so I have two quotes, and life can only be lived forward, but understood only by looking back. And then the same quote as before: we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So that's it. Thank you.